I've been a colleague of Boris's for many years, and I'm sad that it's come to this, but I want to remember with admiration those things that he achieved while in office.
The turmoil in the Conservative Party continues as the backfiring Boris Johnson missile continues to ricochet, damaging all that it touches. He's going before he is pushed, as we learn that the Privileges Committee was about to suspend him for 20 days for deliberately and recklessly misleading Parliament. What mischief will he make before he goes? Why does his desire to reward his mates with honours matter so much to him? And is he helping to gift the next election to Keir Starmer? The Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove is a former colleague of Boris Johnson. He joins us now. Good morning to you, Michael.
Hi, good morning, Stig.
Is it time, Michael Gove, for Boris Johnson, for the good of your party, to put a sock in it and withdraw gracefully to his moated mansion and the moneyed after-dinner circuit?
Well, that's not a loaded question, no. I think that Boris has made a decision to stand down from the House of Commons, and I'd say two things. The first thing is, as you mentioned earlier, I've been a colleague of Boris's for many years, and I'm sad that it's come to this, but I want to remember with admiration those things that he achieved while in office. But I also think now that Boris has made the decision to stand down, it's important that everyone recognises that the government is getting on with the most important things. Whatever people in Westminster think about their jobs, the really most important thing are the jobs of people across our country. That's why we're getting on with halving inflation, reducing the debt, growing the economy, making sure that we reduce waiting lists in the NHS, and of course stopping the boats in the Channel.
But he doesn't want you to do that. He's coming after Rishi Sunak. That's the problem. You might want to reflect on all the things he's achieved, but you must also reflect that he's no longer a friend.
Well, I'll always think of Boris with affection, and Boris will always want to argue his case, as he has done throughout his political career, with individual flair and pungency. But he's now standing down as a Member of Parliament. He's a free agent, and again, he will continue, I'm sure, to contribute in his own way. But for government, the really important thing is to make sure that, for example, today, the Prime Minister is making a series of announcements at the beginning of Tech Week. The future of artificial intelligence affects every single one of us. The success of our tech sector is a matter of trillions of pounds worth of investment. And it's important that people are assured that the government is focusing on making sure that we get that investment, that we maintain those jobs.
Meanwhile, there's going to be a finding from the Privileges Committee about Boris Johnson that he deliberately and recklessly misled Parliament. Will you accept the findings of that committee, Michael Gove?
Well,
you get to vote on it.
Yeah, none of us have seen the report yet. It's a properly constituted committee of Parliament. Parliament voted to establish it, set up its remit. The people on it are distinguished parliamentarians. But unless and until we see the report, then I think it would be premature for me to pass any judgment on it.
One of the rows that's going on is obviously to do with the honours system in this country. Boris Johnson wanted to give an honour to Nadine Dorries. Rishi Sunak did not allow that to happen in some form or another. There seems to be a debate about what happened at a meeting between Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson. Who do you think is more likely to be more trustworthy when it comes to recalling the detail of that meeting?
Well, I wasn't at that meeting.
No.
But I do know that the Prime Minister received a list of nominations. He passed that list unaltered on to the House of Lords Appointments Committee, which is an independent body. The House of Lords Appointments Committee then handed the list back. They had chosen to amend it for their reasons. And again, it's an independent body, so I don't know what their reasons were. And then the Prime Minister passed on that list, again, unamended by him, to the King for final sign-off and approval. So the Prime Minister did not interfere in this process.
Do you feel sad that you've not been given a knighthood, Michael Gove? There's some talk that you were going to get one, and then Boris Johnson decided not to offer you one. What do you make of that?
I think I can live without it.
Can you? Here's another gem from the list that was approved, though. You can live without it. Charlotte Owen is now a live peer. She graduated in 2015. She became a special advisor to Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, two prime ministers whose careers ended in something approaching ignominy, and is now the youngest ever live peer. Graduated 2015, does a bit of political bag carrying for a few years, and is now a live peer. How is that possibly justifiable, Michael Gove? Well, you're not even getting a knighthood.
Well, I'm not sure I do deserve anything. But The key point about appointments to the House of Lords, and particularly resignation honours, is that it is often the case that those who've worked closely with prime ministers in political roles then have an opportunity to go to the House of Lords, where their experience of the workings of government can help with the scrutiny of legislation.
But that's ridiculous. She didn't have any experience of it. She was there for, at best, a few years. This is I mean, the point is that I understand the overarching argument, but it becomes ludicrous when it just looks like you're rewarding your friends. Is it not just doing a job, receiving a salary? Is that not enough? Why should these honours, these absurd honours, be thrown at them?
Well, I personally think it would be invidious for me to pick individuals out and to either give them a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I don't think it would be fair of me when I don't know the individuals concerned as well as those who've worked very closely with them. Your broader point, I think, is one which we can all reflect on. Most of the appointments to the House of Lords come from individual parties, or they're made on the basis of independent nominations. But it is an established fact that when prime ministers stand down, when they resign, that they can nominate people for honours. The reason for that is that the prime minister is thanking those at the end of their career who've contributed to the effective running of government.
Finally, on Boris Johnson, if he wants to run in another constituency next year, would you support him in doing that?
Well, I think that's a matter for Boris. I mean, I think that
it's a matter for you whether you think it's a good idea or not.
Well, I think that I've offered Boris advice in the past. He hasn't always taken it, and so therefore I think that Boris will make his own mind up. But as I said earlier, I think that it's important in making any assessment about Boris to recognise that he contributed a great deal to public life, and his leadership during COVID, in particular, the vaccine rollout, I remember. And it's also the case that he was in the van of the Western world's reaction and support for Vladimir Zelensky following on from Putin's invasion. So in assessing any public figure, I think it's important to take a balanced view.
You were in Education Secretariat, Michael Gove. I know you thought very deeply about education. Ofsted announcing reforms today, but they're keeping their system of one-word ratings. We've got lots of teachers listening to this programme. They've already come out saying they don't agree with that. Do you think the one-word rating system for schools is a good thing?
Yes, I do. I think that the changes that the Chief Inspector have announced today are right. I think that all of us recognise that the Ofsted process can be a testing one, and all of us are aware of the particular individual case that has shone a light on inspection. But rigorous independent inspection of our schools has contributed to the improvement of education alongside the excellent work that teachers and head teachers do, and that is why in the international rankings that are the, I think, most objective guide to how well our children are being educated, England has improved over the course of the last 13 years significantly, to the point where English children are the best readers in the Western world.
So it's not unfair to dub a school with one word in any direction based on an investigation.
No, and it's important to say it's an inspection, not an investigation, but I do appreciate your point. But I think it is, and of course, people will look at an entire Ofsted report and they will recognise that schools can be marked good or outstanding or requires improvement in specific areas. But there is an overall judgment, and that overall judgment helps to ensure that we learn from those schools that are outstanding. We emulate what it is that they do that is impressive. And at the same time, if a school is facing difficulties, that means that we can have targeted support for those in the school, because ultimately what we want to do is to make sure that children receive the very, very best education, and we can't be neglectful of any issues that need to be addressed.
Michael Gove, thank you for taking the time to speak to us.
Not at all, Stig. Thank you.
That is Michael Gove there, the Levelling Up Secretary, very polite at the end.